Good. Hello and welcome to another one of our virtual events. We've got a lovely virtual audience, and we've also got a recording which is going to be on our YouTube channel. So hello to anyone who's watching another time. My name is Ben. I'm owner of our bookshop in Tring, and I'm joined by two wonderful authors, both of whom we've touched on a very similar subject there, essential love of and passion of trees, or specific trees in some cases. And so thank you, James. Thank you, Vicky, for joining us. To the audience, there is a Q&A function, so I'll be disappearing shortly. Please fill in questions through the event, and I will reappear when there's a nice little chunk of them, and I will put those to both James and also to Vicky. Vicky has written a book called For the Love of Trees, which is a gorgeous piece, which I will put the link to as well later on in the event. But without further ado, can I hand over to our host for the event, Vicky Allan.
Thanks so much, Ben. I have to say I'm absolutely thrilled to be interviewing James, whose book I actually hadn't read until I prepared for this, but I'd heard about it and I knew that it was going to be something I absolutely loved. So I did. I'm just going to hold it up just for an extra holding, because we were just discussing it a few seconds ago. This is the hardback, which is very touchy-feely, and you almost feel I can feel the tree rings. But what I felt reading the oak papers was that because I'd done a lot of interviews with people about trees myself, and people would touch on these subjects of our impermanence and of their longevity and of the kind of dream state you might get into in forests and all this kind of thing. But James really goes there. He really goes right into the kind of why we have this connection with trees. And anyway, so I think what I might just do is start with a first initial question, which is, this book's all about the Honeywood Oak. I just wanted to check I'd got the right name there.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, how did you meet your tree?
Yeah, well, thanks, Vicky. Yeah, it's it's nice to be here. Thanks everyone for turning up. Thanks to Tring Bookshop and stuff, because this is officially the launch of the paperback edition as well, as Vicky was saying, we kind of like comparing the feel and good factor of the covers. But yeah, look, so this is, it's basically, yeah, the book's sort of centered on this amazing tree, this oak tree called the Honeywood Oak, which is, the thing is, Vicky, it's an 800-year-old tree. So as you know well from your photographs and your stunning book, the thing about an 800-year-old tree is it kind of captures you, it's, so it was the simple kind of logistic facts are, I was working kind of just down the road from the Honeywood Oak as a secondary school teacher at the time. And I just started teaching a day a week at the University of Essex, teaching this master's course that had just been initiated called Wild Writing, which was all about literature, landscape and the environment. And I knew about the Honeywood Oak. I'd actually been there probably 10 years before, but kind of on a fairly grey day, and I'd just kind of gone past it, kind of grey day in winter, I seem to remember it as. So anyway, I just thought, this will be really nice. I should go and see this tree, and I could kind of just sort of hang out there a bit. And I thought this might be a really good project. I'd just finished writing a book, and I was kind of conscious that I wanted to know more about the natural world. I come from a kind of literary background rather than a naturalist background, and I just thought this would be really good. Maybe I could start a project where I just kind of get to know the ecology of an ancient tree. So I contacted the estate, the Marks Hall estate, where the Honeywood Oak obviously still grows, lives. Language does become an issue when you start to discuss the life of trees, it has to be said. But yeah, and I got in touch with a remarkable guy called Jonathan Jukes, who was then under the title of curator of trees on this small English estate, and and he agreed to meet me at the tree. And so I met there literally on a, it was a day a bit like this. It was a really nice day in kind of, in kind of early, late spring. And he met me at this stunning tree. And I was just kind of like, this it seems a really nice thing to do. And I think what happened as well was even on that first meeting was Jonathan was really, he's quite a quiet guy, but he's quite, once you get to know him, you realize how much he really cares about trees. And one of the first things that I learned from him was the story of the wider narrative of this estate, that this 800-year-old tree, if we'd been standing there 60 years before, would have been one of around 300 of a similar age. And that in 2 generations of humans, they'd all been cut down. So they were all cut down in the 1950s, just purely for cash. And I was genuinely kind of like, this is a story, So that, that's kind of how it began. And then I would just go and visit this tree, fairly regularly, every couple of days or so, when I could, in between teaching and home, kind of thing.
Did you think at that point, I'm going to spend 2 years doing this? And did you have any idea that it might become that sort of level of obsession, or did that sort of just happen over time?
Yeah, no, when I initially set up, had the idea, I kind of thought, that kind of classic idea of following nature through a season, through the seasons, through a year. And that was my initial idea, that I would kind of try to go there at fairly regular intervals and kind of observe and learn. And I'd read books and get to know, some of the incredible kind of, wildlife that lives around, but also the kind of the tree ecosystem, as I say, the kind of these sort of thousands of living creatures that are supported, that whose home it is. Jonathan, used to say, it's like a block of flats. This tree is, there's just different inhabitants in different parts of this structure. And that was my original intention, was to, go back there and spend time. But I kind of initially had thought, well, I'll spend about a year, but I just didn't want to leave. That was the kind of thing,
But also, it's striking that it wasn't just the Honeywood Oak, that you also had these other oaks. It became a kind of wider attachment to other oaks too. That there were.
Yeah, that's right, Vicky. I think what happened was, initially I would kind of go to the Honeywood Oak, and it was a kind of lovely project. It was a good learning project. I felt I was kind of busy, kind of learning about things like forest stiletto flies that only live within the heart rot, the kind of center of of these ancient oaks. But I think what also happened as I was reading and learning more and more about the kind of literary, cultural, and historical aspects of oak trees. Going to British Library quite a lot, and reading far more. I just started to learn and recognize how important, not just ancient oaks like this Honeywood Oak, but oaks, how important they've been to humankind, if you like, right through from prehistory, in that sense that, those first farming communities, the Neolithic people of kind of, up to sort of from around 6,000 years old in Britain, we know that they relied, say, on the acorn harvest, as they were moving away from hunter-gatherer lifestyles. They had this ability each year to go back to things like acorns and survive. So the oaks were not just providing kind of wood and fire, shelter, but they were providing sustenance. And this kind of, I was kind of like, that's amazing, and then this is replicated all across the Northern Hemisphere, that where you get oaks, you get humans.
Yeah, I like the way that you pointed out that thing that we think, oh, the oak is ours in Britain. We have Druids. We, you know, the oak is our tree, but then you go to other countries and they all have this similar relationship.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, you know, as you say, I sort of began with this one big tree because it's a lovely thing to go and stand next to and get to know. But I also, after a period of time, I realized that I didn't have to be kind of driving just to this tree, that there was this kind of conceptual change where I recognized that all trees were individuals, and they were individual living beings. You know, this kind of almost dramatic kind of breakthrough in my little brain where I kind of started to recognize this thing that you can recognize the individuality of individual trees, and that as soon as you start to do that, you know, you start to create, if you like, a relationship with different trees. And so I was started going to a tree that was sort of nearer my home that I could just walk to, that you could climb into as well. And that was a different aspect of kind of climbing into oaks and climbing into trees, and then not just for the climbing. You know, some people love to climb trees, and I was more kind of just climb in and just sit and just stay there. You know, again, in that kind of slightly different kind of context of kind of experiential notion, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I do like to occasionally climb a tree, but you did seem to be doing a lot of climbing that particular tree. I think it's the stag-headed one that you did.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Getting right there inside it. And I found it, you described this one moment where there's some people start arriving, you can hear them. And it's like you suddenly realize the kind of slight weirdness of being up there in the tree. It's kind of become normalized to you, but you sort of realize that they're going to think this is a bit weird.
Yeah, well, you described it so well, because it's that feeling that you're kind of, you know, I was just kind of sitting there quite happily, and I'm not, you know, it's sort of 12, 15 foot up. It's not, you know, it's not up in the top. And then I heard a dog barking, and it's kind of a bit of a dog walking patch. And I suddenly thought that thing of like, hold on, I'm a grown man. What would they think? Kind of thing. And then it was interesting because it was a time where I was kind of recognizing, experimenting a little bit with the effect that it was having on me, because I was recognizing the sense that it was making me feel calmer. You know, that there was a kind of impact of actually being within this oak. Yeah, I mean, it was part of this whole journey. I mean, maybe I should just read from the section, just to get a kind of sense of what the kind of the pace of the book as well. It was really important to me that I kind of wrote it kind of almost in oak time, if you like, in this kind of the slower pace as I could without it becoming tedious, if you like, in human worlds. But anyway, so this is just from the opening, what's called Beginnings. Wherever oak trees grow around the globe, people have developed a connection to them. Throughout human history, particular oaks have been favored for their setting, for their age and size. Ancient oaks have always been special. People collect beneath their boughs. They may gather there as a place of significance within the landscape, or merely as somewhere to shelter. Whereas we humans are creatures of movement, oaks are static beings. They do not shift. They are born and they die on the same patch of earth. It is that sure-footedness that is so appealing. Ancient oaks hold a powerful sense of longevity, the sense of security, the sense of attachment to a place across time, enchants us. We are drawn to old oaks. You can stand beneath a grand oak and know that your more distant ancestors did so too. Oaks hold on to the memories of earlier generations. By touching the skin of the oak, it is possible to feel some tentative trace of those that have gone before. Human beings and oaks have lived beside one another as neighbors since the earliest times, and we continue to do so. We no longer need the bodies of oak trees to build our homes. or to fuel our fires, and we no longer need acorns to sustain us through hard years and meager harvests. Yet on some level, we still lean on oak trees. In ways we do not fully understand, we need them.
Yeah, I love that passage. I love the way you describe it as sure-footedness, that sort of constancy there. And
That's right, yeah, and that's I'm trying to hint towards this. What I ended up doing was going and interviewing loads of people about humans and oaks. Everyone from kind of educational, environmental psychologists, educationalists, pagans, wood carvers, woodmen, woodwomen, about their different relationships that people have with trees. And because I was trying to grasp this thing of why was it, this was kind of, why was it that when you go and sit in an oak tree, you feel kind of calmer? And we kind of all know it, it's kind of like this, we were chatting before about that idea of like hugging trees. And we were sort of saying, not that long ago, 20, 30 years ago, people would have gone, oh, yeah, weirdos, hugging trees and stuff. And now we're just saying, it's very much like that's completely, everyone gets that that's a kind of calming, nice nature connectedness thing to do. And why?
yeah,
So,
yeah, everyone went a bit mad for it over lockdown in particular.
Yeah.
So just like, I definitely know people who were a bit isolated who were hugging trees because of that, and but for other reasons as well. But yeah,
that's right. And I think even the whole concept, there's an amazing website, kind of online thing that comes out of America called treehugger.com, which is just huge, and it's all kind of tree related stuff, and it's just that sense of being kind of in touch with the idea of being connected with nature as much as anything. And I think you're absolutely right. That's it's been one of the key positives, if you like, of the pandemic, is this sense that we've all been forced almost to recognize how much nature should be in our life, and how we are part of nature, and that and any sense of us not being in nature, part of it, is not healthy for us, and this kind of thing. It's really interesting. It's been a really interesting time, hasn't it?
Yeah, and you mentioned one of those conversations that you'd had with Mike, is it Mike Rosenberg? Is that his name?
Mike Rogerson. Yeah, Dr. Mike Rogerson.
Sorry, yeah. That he, and obviously he was the kind of science part of your book, really, wasn't he? And I just wondered if you could say whether you think science takes us to that place of understanding or not.
That's really good question, Vicky, because it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, it's certainly a lot of us, and myself included, really, we kind of need science to almost say, oh yeah, no, this is some sort of definitive truth. So, and it's interesting chatting to, someone like, Mike Rogerson, who's, as I say, he's kind of many things, but he's kind of environmental psychologist is how I always think of him. So he was telling me, for example, about a famous study where in Edinburgh, the psychology department rigged up portable EEG equipment on a variety of participants. And so they kind of attached it to their brains and then sent them on walks around Edinburgh and then analyzed the data. And what was really obvious was that their mind patterns, their brain patterns, altered as they went into green spaces of the city. So as they walked through parkland, they went from what are known as the stressed states, which are kind of the normal states of human action, into what they call meditative states. And I thought this was really quite remarkable that you could monitor this. This was a kind of scientific monitoring, and in the same way that you can explain things like forest bathing, which has been a modern kind of technology of taking people out into woodlands and forests and sort of showing them how they will feel better by being there. And you can explain this in terms of kind of phytoncides, these kind of chemical releases, the chemicals that are released by certain trees, and all these different kind of compounds. So you get this kind of balancing of a human experience, and then a kind of science that's sort of saying, well, this is why this takes place to a certain extent. But there does seem to be some sort of gap as well, where we kind of perhaps can't entirely explain everything. But for me, I felt it was really important to be, genuinely, I wanted to know kind of the science side. I mean, I started by, doing my kind of reading of the kind of literature and history and the cultural history, if you like, humans and oaks. And then I kind of was like, well, hold on, I want science of this as well, sort of thing. So that was really an important part of it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that also, because obviously I think we just talked about it earlier, this thing that you kind of skirt around. You do talk a bit about what there's one of your people that you interviewed describes it as witchy poo, the kind of more sort of mystic type relationship with trees, or esoteric, certainly not the scientific version of our relationship with trees. But I just wondered where you felt you got with that, because you were sort of keeping a little bit of distance from it, and because it's like it takes us to those places, but sometimes the language can be off-putting for some people, but not for others.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's right. I mean, as I say, this was genuine, just a kind of journey of exploration and of knowledge for me about oaks and humans. It began with me trying to learn more about the kind of the natural history of the oak, if you like, then reading a lot more about the kind of literature and culture, finding out about the science, and recognizing that there was this huge kind of aspect of a kind of, as you say, a kind of more mystical, spiritual side. And I kind of, again, for the book, I kind of went and if you like, interviewed, or as it was, just spoke to, chatted with someone who I knew, who was a very, very kind of eloquent and was a practicing pagan, and would talk about kind of oak meditations with particular individual, with separate types of trees. And she was really interesting, because she was, again, she kind of almost castigating me for kind of drop the intellectualization, just experience it, feel it, kind of thing. And as you say, I was kind of well, that's not really where I come from. And I found, as I went on this journey, that more and more I was intrigued by this aspect, and it's another aspect of the human connection with oaks, if you like.
Yeah, I like she urged you to be the tree, didn't she?
Yeah, that's right. And I think we're finding this more and more, this kind of this sense in which we as humans kind of we want to learn everything, but we also need to do the experiential side of things, of actually just feeling. And as we move into kind of forging our own narratives of climate change and trying to find a way through to the 22nd century or something, we're going to need, we know now, I think everyone's accepting that we're going to need to be better connected with our natural world. We're going to need to see ourselves as part of it, not as this kind of separate ultimate being that is just kind of looking out on the green spaces, and that's, that kind of, then you realize how important it is to do that thing, to genuinely recognize trees are individual living beings, and that they are very healthy and good things, and that we need to be operating with them, not just going, well, I'm really sorry, but we've got this infrastructure project, us humans, so we're going to kind of chop them all down. We'll make some nice little ones and we'll stick them over here, but not putting them on an equal footing, if you like. And that needs to shift. I mean, it just needs to shift. If anyone's read Suzanne Simard's book, Finding the Mother Tree, I mean, she's just a kind of guru legend figure, but very much, she's very interesting. So she's this as you know, I'm sure, Vicky, this British Columbian ecologist whose work has kind of come through into the mainstream to do with the ways in which trees communicate with each other through their root systems, you know, to put very simply, the mitochondrial connections that they make. But she, you know, when she initially came up with her material, you know, she was absolutely castigated and kind of sort of kicked around a bit by the scientific community. If you like.
Now everybody loves it. It's just like,
no one accepts it, you know, and you've got others that, you know, I touch on this a bit in the book, you know, Suzanne Simard, and then, you know, kind of figures like Monica Gagliano, and, you know, these incredible plant scientists or evolutionary ecologists, or whatever you want to call them, really, who are recognizing more and more they're on this cutting edge of the kind of scientific side, as we say, but where it's touching on this kind of mythical, spiritual aspect of the natural world. You know, that's put it that simply, and that's fascinating. That's really interesting, because that's we know more and more that that's where we need to go as a species in order to save this planet.
And it is also where you seem to have gone as an individual, you know, as a, you know, and obviously you're conveying that to all of us. But, you know, I just wondered, like, you know, it does seem at points where you do really seem to be able to, like, there's points when you arrive at the tree and you seem to feel yourself as very much separate from nature. There seems to be that at the beginning, you're outside it, nature seems to scatter, you notice lots of things, but you do seem to reach some point where you seem to be more absorbed in it.
Yeah, I think that's well, it's nice that you're kind of saying that, because I think there's a sense that I was trying to portray in the book of this journey kind of into a kind of closer connectedness with, not just with oaks, but with the kind of wider natural world, which is, again, as I say, was kind of symptomatic of what we need to be doing as a species, you know, globally. So yeah, that was sort of part of, I mean, this book has taken a number of years to come to fruition, if you like, and it's gone through a number of kind of transformations. So, you know, I've shown my students before, you know, when I teach creative writing to, like, I think my second years, I was showing, you know, this kind of stack of folders that I've got of the kind of the oak paper, which are the oak papers, the notes, you know, and notes on my own, you know, my own observations, and then other people's observations and bits and scribblings and stuff. And this thing that then condensed into kind of that. And as you say, you kind of, over the years, you kind of change the way in which you're going to tell this story and the narrative, and it did try and reflect my own journey, if you like, which, as you say, was kind of far more kind of observational, and then became hopefully more kind of experiential, if you like.
Did you feel like you did ever be the oak?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would still suggest that one of the things that I kind of experimented with a little bit was what I started to call oak meditation. I mean, you know, like that's not too unusual. If you look at Buddhist meditative practice, there's a strong tradition of kind of going out into the natural world. You don't have to sort of sit in some Buddhist center in the middle of a city to practice meditation, though that's often where people do, and myself included, for quite a while. You know, so I was experimenting with going and sitting next to an oak tree and trying to meditate there, you know, and that kind of calming process that meditation can bring, that we know, you know, breathing exercises, etc. And kind of, that was an interesting, again, you know, it was a kind of part of the journey, I think, as much as anything. You know, and to that extent, I think, once you, as a human being, once you are slowing down, once you are becoming more static, once you are kind of living longer, if you like, you're becoming the oak. So to that extent, I think it's really interesting that when you go and sit in an oak tree, or in any tree really, you know, but oaks are, I think, particularly good. I do think there's an historical connection with oaks certainly for the peoples of the Northern Hemisphere. And so sitting in an oak, you literally slow down, your heart rate slows, your breathing slows, you are becoming oak-like, if you like. So yeah, to a certain extent.
I mean, it's interesting because I mean, obviously that sort of relates to some of the Druid stuff. Like I interviewed someone who'd done a lot of OM work, which is with different trees and their different properties. So she'd say, sit by a beach, that's creativity or something, and being on the beach maybe would be for her sort of thing with that. And so that each different tree would have a different, and they do have obviously very different feels, these different. I mean, one of the things I wondered was that, how do you feel about the other trees? Because this is all about the oaks, and you clearly special. But I like a Scots pine. I do like a beech. What do you think? They're pretty good, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I did a really good class the other week where I was talking, and someone else was talking about yew trees, and oaks and yews are the two kind of I don't know if you like most significant kind of ancient trees of Britain in a lot of ways, I would suggest. And yeah, I mean, I've been just doing a really interesting project, which was writing about ash dieback, actually. I just did this little commission to write about ash dieback, and that was really interesting because again, it was a really short little project, really, but for working with a folk band and just going away, and they wanted me to write a 500-word story about ash dieback, and I just thought, I kind of literally spent about a day researching this completely other.
And it's been so significant also in the UK as well, as like how we've used the ash is.
Oh, absolutely. I thought the only way that I can write this is from the ash tree's point of view, if you like. I just thought let's do this, because effectively, again, it's this narrative of humans brought in these other versions of the ash that then brought this ash dieback to these parts, and and it's really sad, and you kind of think, yeah, great, always round you often see this, that unfortunately we often just haven't thought it through. We're acting on stuff because it's kind of economically seems the best policy, or someone's going to make some money on it, or this is a good way of doing things in the kind of short term, but we don't kind of see a wider picture. And I think that kind of environmental vision is it's more and more, it's so important, isn't it? But it's a funny idea, isn't it? I did think that I mean, there's there are many types of oaks as well, so as you start to focusing.
What about a young oak? I mean, like actually the oaks around here where I am, because I'm in a city, the city park, they're all young oaks. It's a whole different feel, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it really is. And I'm really lucky. I've got this sort of little 2-acre field, and I've just let that sort of rewild itself over the last sort of 15 years or something. So I've got a collection now of young and sort of teenage, well, sort of teenage, not teenage, but sort of they're 15-year-old oaks, some of them. And that's just amazing watching and seeing the variance, even between in, say, in wintertime, some of them have been holding their leaves through winter and others haven't, and this, what they call phenotypic variance, and this kind of this even that, just reminding yourself that each one of those is individual and is living, and if I manage to, will live until it falls over in 1,000 years time, without humans getting in the way, and that's the way it kind of should be, really.
Yeah. And has it changed what you feel a tree is?
Well, I know, I saw that question. I was like, wow, that's what. Then you're taking me down some kind of manic philosophical pathway. And look, yeah, I mean, I think it has. Look, I mean, one of the things that I think I tried to get across in the book was this kind of like almost a sort of philosophical shift, and I've gone on about it, but I genuinely think I wasn't really seeing trees. I was like, oh yeah, well, I can see the Honeywood Oak. It's like it's this really big 800-year-old thing that's there, and it's amazing, and it's this, and I was sort of saying that, and I was having this sort of personal experience, but I don't think I'd really genuinely kind of gone, hold on, they're all different. No, they're all different, in that sense. Like, you go into London or something, and you see all these like masses of humans, and you go, it's really weird. Everyone's different, aren't they? And then you kind of like need to do the same with trees. And it was this philosopher, Martin Buber, that I was passed on to, who's kind of a really interesting kind of existential philosopher. And I kind of read a passage by him, and I was like, oh yeah, it's really obvious, isn't it? Sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I think that has made me recognize something different about what trees are, if you like.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think I've been tree blind in the past.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting
it. Like it's not even that I wouldn't notice them as individuals. It's like, oh, so there was a tree there, was there? And yeah, that's nicely put. I think you do that, and I think we can do it, particularly in a kind of urban setting, that you can just get sort of nature blinded, so that you almost hardly notice any of it, because it's like, well, it's just trying to fit in amongst this human world, or we've whacked loads of concrete over stuff so that it can't grow properly. And that's so true, isn't it? And although it would be hard to miss something like the Honeywood Oak, wouldn't it?
That's the thing, isn't it?
You're not going to walk past that.
No. And one of the, some of the nicest comments that I've had about the book have been people saying, I just notice all the trees now all the time, the individual like oaks, as I'm walking along, and notice that one's sort of different, and that one's got a branch sticking out that way, and I kind of like, that's just honestly, that's genuinely like the nicest thing people can say, really, because then you just kind of go, that's sort of the journey I've been on, and I'm, and as we're saying, we're sort of still on, that kind of sense of recognizing, the importance of, I mean, you can, as we're starting to see with people like Gagliano, that each plant is making decisions about what it's doing, this kind of thing. So like no mow May, or, leaving your lawn to grow, and allowing the wildlife to be wild. That's all, it's all part of the same philosophy, really. I think it's all part of the same vision, really.
Yeah. I just wanted to, because you talk a bit about Stephen Taylor, who's the artist who had in some ways a similar but different relationship with an oak, because he painted it over many years, and obviously that helped him through a time of extreme grief after multiple losses. But he seemed, it seemed as if you were saying that by the end of that, he sort of moved on from the oak. It had just been there for really difficult passage of his life, and for this amazing creative thing that he did. I wondered, what about you and the Honeywood Oak? What's that? Where's that at?
Yeah, again, I really like this question, Vicky, because it's nice. It's not. I really like that. Stephen's really interesting because he's an amazing painter, and I mean, the thing, I guess the key thing is he's moved, like, so that vital difference. Oaks don't move, they don't do that, but he's moved. He lives in Ely now, and this oak that he went to and that he painted over this sort of 3-year period, painted sort of over 50 portraits, I guess you'd call them, but often landscapes, actually. But there were sort of 50 or so actual portraits of this oak that he did over about 3 years. Obviously, that was in one place, actually not a million miles from my house, as it turned out, about sort of five miles away. No, but yeah, and in North Essex. So it's kind of that's one of the key things, and this again, this was something that I kind of picked up on in the book to a certain extent in my reading, that this idea that oaks can be kind of central points of human landscapes as well, sort of, so the center of village life often, and that for, you know, for generations of people, the idea of losing contact with that oak is really important. You know, it's really important to
And
them.
yet we've got so used to moving away from places now, haven't we?
Yeah,
We're
that's
all
right.
much
That's
more.
right. I mean, you know, I mean, it's funny because I've been back to the Honeywood Oak, you know, quite a lot recently, and I've just literally today just arranged with someone who's making a film about trees that we're going to meet there in a couple of weeks. And I was thinking, oh, that's good. I've got another excuse to go back to the Honeywood Oak. And yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right, isn't it? That I certainly go back to the, you know, to the trees that are around me all the time. And I think it's really interesting how I've been kind of changed as a human by my time with the Honeywood Oak. I think that's the kind of the way to think about it as much as anything.
But do you go to the other trees more still because they're nearer? The other
Yeah, I mean, just literally because of that physical aspect. And I'm sure, you see, the thing is that Stephen Taylor, I bet, I don't want to speak for him, but I would imagine that when he's back if he's ever back in sort of North Essex, if he visits a friend or something, he might well kind of think, oh, I might just go and have a look, because this oak it was a really kind of central focus, if you like, for him re-establishing some kind of sense to his life, because this was a guy who went through, as you put it very well, a series of grievings by the loss of those around him. Just that was kind of, you know, fatalistic circumstance, and that sure-footedness of that oak, I'm sure, was something to do with what helped him kind of emerge from the other side. You know, and that's that thing again, that stability that oaks offer, I think, goes right back into our prehistory, that we know that there's some weird kind of connection thing, sort of, where we know if we go to oaks, we'll be all right, you know.
Yeah. And because you do talk a lot about, I mean, not just hugging, but just touching them, you know, there's that sort of, you know, that just having that connection, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You know, I've taken, say, like, I met up with a group of school children at the Honeywood Oak, for example, you know, and you know what kids are brilliant, because they won't kind of like have any kind of social expectations or, you know, concerns about that. So what they do is they just run up and they just hug the tree. And I know quite a few forest school teachers, and I think you'll find they'll say the same thing.
Yeah.
Some of them might be grabbing sticks and you know, whatever, but that's a really interesting one as well. You know, that I think the whole childlike experience can be really a really powerful one, in terms of just thinking, yeah, you know, I often think if we were more childlike in some ways, if we allowed our kind of adult minds to just kind of relax a bit and just go with what we really want to do. As you put that example of me sitting 12 foot up an oak tree, family walking past with their dog. You know, at some point, because I was up that tree not that long ago, about, you know, a few weeks ago, and I was sitting there again, and I was just thinking, at some point I'm going to have to do this, aren't I? I'm just going to have to sit here while everyone walks back, and I'm going, all right, and just see what happens. It might be amusing.
Yeah, you should do that. It's
really, shouldn't I? You know, it's like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Someone's going to go, oh, hello, or so, you know, I mean, like, call the police. You know, there's a guy in an oak on a hill in North Essex. There's worse things going on, I think. Really.
I know these circus performers who perform in trees, and they set themselves up in the woods, and they just, like, one of the guys sits with a fiddle, and he really enjoys just sitting up there waiting and watching, because the people don't know that he's there, and he feels like just like a bird sitting up there watching.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty amazing, and we haven't really even kind of touched on some of those kind of mythological aspects, but, you know, you've got these figures like the Green Man, the Green Woman, the Green Children, you know, and that whole kind of connection of kind of, I don't know, with our kind of wild hunter-gatherer past is what I think it's all about. you know, and that sense is really interesting, that about humans in trees sort of thing.
You became a little bit obsessed with the Green Man. I felt like you because there was a point almost when you thought you saw a green child maybe in the.
You know what, I could go on about that, but I really don't know what that was. This was sort of this weird figure that kind of, it was dawn. It was at that time when things are weird. But I will say this: my next door neighbour, I spoke to them the other day, and they said they had seen, because I chatted to them about it. I was like, "Did you see?" They thought they saw some weird green person in the woods just behind our houses about 2 weeks ago. And again,
It's coming for you. Green child, green woman, green.
Yeah, they're everywhere. You know, like, believe it. You know, I think they're going to save the world if we don't. But I mean,
you did do lots of research around that, didn't you? And you found some fabulous quotes and sort of looked into Puck as a sort of version of.
Yeah. I mean, it's really well documented to a certain extent, and on another level, it's not documented at all. I mean, the whole Green Man figure is, you go to, so many churches, cathedrals around Europe, and you have these amazing, they're often medieval kind of carvings that have often been sort of hidden, carved into the structures of the cathedral. So like Rouen Cathedral or Ely Cathedral or Exeter Cathedral, these kind of great cathedrals, and you have these kind of foliate figures that are kind of tucked away. And again, people sort of interpret it in many ways as a kind of some sort of pre-Christian figures that then the people who were being, who were doing this carving, that they wanted to bring them into this new religious building, etc. I mean, you can look at them in various ways, but I think there's certainly a sense in which that they, in some ways, they touch on this human connection with the natural world, that works really well. I mean, Ralph of Coggeshall, for example, who's this sort of 12th, 13th century chronicler, a monk, who was actually living, weirdly, just down the road. I mean, like a mile away or so from the Honeywood Oak. And he writes this incredible story about the green children and again, this is a chronicle, so he's heard this story. And he writes about these 2 children that were discovered in this on the edge of this village that was then known as the Wolf Pits, that's now known as Woolpit in Suffolk, and writes about how these children couldn't speak English, they were speaking this foreign tongue, and that they were green. Their skin was green, they were literally green. Boy and a girl, and the boy died, unfortunately, but the girl survived, lived on, learned English, married, this kind of incredible, and this whole backstory to them as well, that they come through this void and kind of stepped out into this English countryside.
Yeah, I found the description really bewitching. What he wrote, you did include a little section of what.
Yeah, I kind of slightly battled with publishers. I mean, they were very good, but I wanted to include quite a long section from him, because he goes into such detail, of these children. And again, you have very much stories of, as you mentioned, kind of Puck, the whole idea of the fairy, is very much just the for me, very much within this same narrative of green men, green children, green women, this other kind of inhabitation of the forests by humankind, if you like.
Yes. It looks like Ben's appeared. Are we?
Yeah. No, I'm here.
I see Ben appearing, Green Man-like out of the.
Yeah.
Just coming out of the ether as
you. Yeah. Where's your green paint?
Yeah, I'd probably look all right with a few twigs coming out, wouldn't I? So.
I think you do.
Yeah. No, any audience want to get some questions in? Now's your chance. I was I was wondering what the process of getting published, and you'd come up with the idea of this book and stuff. Was there what were the challenges there, and how many did you find an agent who was willing? Did you easily find an agent? Was it kind of a tricky process, or how did you find that?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ben, because as I was saying, I was kind of I was writing this book over a period of years, and I hadn't intended to. You know, I kind of initially thought it would take about a year to write, and then I'd try and get it published. But as it turned out, I realized within a few months that that was not the book that I wanted to write, or should write, or could write. So in fact, what happened was this book then took years and years and years, really. I mean, it certainly took time. And during that period, I got an agent based on other material that I'd published and stuff. And so I was fortunate that I then published another book in that in between time. And then basically we just approached, I mean, Canongate were really supportive right from the beginning. But as I also mentioned, I had three, there were three proper versions, like completely different, of this book. Which is why in the end I really liked this idea of the Oak papers, because it was this sense that I was trying to tell this story, but you know, it's such a grand narrative to try and tell the story of oaks, really, that, you know, oaks and humans, it was just too big. And my agent, Jessica Willard, she was just amazing at kind of sitting down with me, and kind of, she was the only person really that would kind of, I could talk to about this project as it became kind of more and more.
That is so important, and having a good agent who really taps into whatever.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's right. I mean, I think I've been kind of blessed with Jessica, and then my editor at Canongate as well, Simon Thorogood, who was just amazing right from the beginning. He was like, yeah, I get it. You know, he's like, and this is the thing, I think this is such the thing. It was the same with Jonathan Jukes, you know, this curator of trees. You know, when I sort of said to him, what I'd really like to do is be able to just come into the estate like all times, day and night, and in snow and rain, and sit by the oak. And he was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I get that. You know, where some people would just be like, I'm not letting you on our estate, you know. And I think that's the same, you know, often that's the same with most kind of creative projects, that some people can kind of see it, and some people just kind of a little
absolutely. Vicky, does all that ring true to your experience of getting published?
Well, actually, I feel like my books have always been rush jobs, because I'd get a commission and then I'd be like, oh my God, I've got to get that done. So it's the opposite of the Oak papers. And I did really feel on my tree book that, first of all, I did a lot of work on it. Just it crossed over into the start of lockdown last year. And so I felt like I could have done with more time just standing with the trees, because it's essentially a lot of storytelling collection. It can be done that way, rather than I would have loved to spend a bit longer just spending time with a tree.
I have put a link to Vicky's book in the chat function. By all means, I mean, carry on watching, but perhaps click it before we end the event. So a couple of questions. One from Margaret, who lives in Tring, but she moved from Wivenhoe, home of Essex Uni, to Tring, which is obviously your neck of the woods as well, James. I was impressed that there are many more trees here in Tring, and they grow much larger than your area of Essex. Now, I'm going to have to take Margaret's word for that. I believe that's because we have more rain. Again, I'm not sure we can judge on that. With your experience, do you think your area has fewer large trees compared to other areas? Is that fair to say?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think Margaret's probably right about the rain. Essex is known as sort of sunny Essex, and I think we get slightly less rain. Particularly, I remember Clacton was always suggested to be the sunniest place in England or something. And I don't know. I mean, I think historically what you get is wherever the ancient oaks we have in this country that remain, unfortunately, tend to be wealthy estates that were able to keep them as hunting, deer parks, effectively. So that tends to be the largest kind of collections of oaks. You get individual ones occasionally on boundary edges, village greens that are kind of able to survive, but they tend to be in forest lands that are kind of protected. That tends to be.
I mean, actually, that rings true of Tring, because a lot of our areas around here has had a very wealthy sort of Rothschild owners. So vast swathes of, and there's every town seems to have a Rothschild mansion, which may connect. But I know what Margaret's saying. Certainly, there are a lot of big trees around here. But
well, that's
are they oaks or are they other types of trees?
I think also all varieties. So Jade Green has asked, hi Vicky, James and Ben, you don't need to thank me at all. Thank you for this lovely event. James, in the Oak Papers you often quote poets and writers' perceptions of the oak. Was this cultural exploration always self-affirming, or were there times you disagreed or another writer clouded your own perception?
That's good. That's a really good question, I think.
It's painful how good questions we get from our audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good question. I think initially there was a sense in which I just wanted to read as much I could about our kind of, in books, the kind of the history, if you like, of humans and oaks. So, going right back to, say, Homer and the Odyssey, which is probably the first written account of oaks, if you like. It's probably the first written account of most things. And so Odysseus, for example, when he's thinking about returning to Ithaca, he has to go to the temple of Dodona and consult the oracle, and the word is whispered through the susurrations of oak leaves through the central, at the center of the temple there's this sacred oak. I wouldn't necessarily know that I believe that the word of God or the gods comes through the susurrations of oak leaves, but hey, I mean, I'm not about to go against Homer, and that's a really interesting kind of cultural kind of reference point. So often I was finding that with these kind of literal cultural readings, and often there were just fantastic stuff. Like it kind of sent me back to like my Virginia Woolf, to Orlando, and I was literally at some point remembering passages and then going back to this passage and being reminded that this was taking place by an oak tree, with Orlando reading her poem, The Oak Tree, and you're kind of like, oh my goodness, I'd forgotten it. And there were these kind of associations and connections and coincidences that were genuinely kind of invigorating towards writing of the book, I thought.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm conscious we're now 2 minutes shy of our hour, which is always a pain to have to come bring something so wonderful to an end. Just quickly, and I'll ask you both, what's next? James, what are you writing next?
I'm working on a book that's going to be published, I think next year actually, called Grounded, working with Canongate, which is really, really exciting as well. I've just put in the diary to meet up with my editor next week to talk about the version that's going to be the final one. So that's really exciting.
No doubt a physical meeting, which is an unusual thing for us all. Vicky, what are you on?
Well, I've got a few things going on, but the other strand of my work is really around wild swimming. So I've got a book called The Art of Wild Swimming coming out, and there's a Scotland version and there's an England and Wales version.
Wow.
So that's with the photographer that I collaborated with on For the Love of Trees. So yes, lots of swimming as well as trees.
Brilliant. Oh, do you know what? We've had a number of authors who are mad on their wild swimming. So
yeah, it's gone mad this year. I can't believe the number of people who are now doing it. It's just
Brilliant.
Very good.
Can I say
Very good.
a huge word of thanks to you, James? Thanks for joining us, and Vicky, thank you for joining us. You are you came via Alice Adams, who I know will watch this when she's around, who helped out with the Dave Goulson interview.
Thanks, Alice.
And this interview, as well as the Dave Goulson one, is on our YouTube channel. I put that link on the chat function, so in these last few seconds, you can grab a link to that. And thank you to the audience for joining us, and do have a great evening, whatever you're going to go on and do. So thank you very much. Bye, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Ben.
Bye, thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.